Chairman,
Thank you,
we're
Mr.
often
Chair.
confused.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Governor, I just want to tell you, I appreciate you being here. I know we had an exchange last time. Nothing's here is intended to be personally offensive to you. Just trying to get some information. Do you agree that that people really were made sick because of the exposure to toxins that were in the environment in the aftermath of 9/11?
Congressman, I can't make that kind of a finding. That has to be based on the scientific data and the studies.
Okay, based on the scientific data and the studies, do you believe that people were made sick by toxins that were in the environment after 9/11?
If they come to those conclusions, I would have to agree, but I wait for those conclusions. And
Yeah, but Governor,
no,
I mean,
really we were concerned. Congressman, obviously we were concerned, or we wouldn't have recommended time and again that those working on the pile wear the appropriate safety protections.
so can we safely say that you do agree that the illnesses that people have suffered as a result of their work around recovery and things like that post 9/11 are related to their illnesses? You would tend to think that's
something that
true.
will be proven by all those studies, including the Mount Sinai one.
So are you saying yes, no, or you just don't know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I am not a scientist.
Do
I'm
you-
not a doctor.
I know. I've read your bio. All right, what does your common sense tell you?
Excuse me?
What does your common sense tell you?
My common sense tells me that we were concerned about possible health ramifications from workers who were not adequately protected. Otherwise, we would not have repeated over and over again that they should wear protection.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you've testified already today about how the toxics that you tested for were within limits in terms of the studies that you relied on. If you do you doubt the testing? Do you doubt any of those tests that you found that were within the acceptable limits for exposure for people? I mean, because
Do I doubt the quality of the tests?
yeah.
I have no reason to doubt the quality of the tests. Again, the men and women at the Environmental Protection Agency, the scientists, and they weren't just Environmental Protection Agency scientists who were looking at this data. It was OSHA, CDC, ATSDR, a number, as well as hospitals, the city, and the state. There was a lot of instantaneous peer review, if you will, going on. And so it was not just EPA.
Well, here's the thing, Governor. We have a lot of people who, in fact, are sick. Many of them are here today. And yet we have you saying that, hey, we tested and it was within acceptable levels. That's why we told the public that we reassured the public that it was safe. How do you account for what looks to me like a discrepancy?
Well, Congressman, again, I think we're talking about two different things. On the pile, there were concerns, and clearly, as Mr. Henshaw has indicated, when those towers came down, anybody that was engulfed in that dust, you have to believe that there was an enormous amount of contamination that took place then. But that was, as it was happening, nobody was out there taking readings. Everybody was trying to figure out what to do, and our offices, in fact, were very near that site and had to be evacuated, and people had to go immediately to the emergency response center. But in the ambient air quality around Lower Manhattan in general, after setting aside the moment when those buildings came down, after that, when we started taking tests and data, we didn't see, the scientists were telling me that they didn't see anything that indicated long-term health problems for the general public. And of course, remember that Lower Manhattan was closed to the general public, to most of the general public, for quite some time afterwards as well. It wasn't a complete kind of a closeout, but they were pretty strict police patrols. But that's aside. We weren't even dealing with that. We were just dealing with what we were hearing from the scientists, to the best of my knowledge.
Well, let me are you saying that the people who have contracted illnesses as well, who I believe contracted illnesses as a result of their exposure, were people who were only who were exposed later, and not as a result of the on the scene at the time of the attack that were engulfed in that big pile? Are you saying that the illnesses are folks who are the people who are sick are people who got exposed outside of the initial attack?
I couldn't even speculate on that, which is why the Environmental Protection Agency is part of the ongoing health registry and examinations that are being conducted to follow people to find out. exactly what kind of exposure, whether these are, whether they can make that kind of correlation. I couldn't speculate on that, sir.
One last question, Mr. Chair. Earlier on, I think, one member of our panel, sort of raised the question about why we would go through an exercise about asking questions post hoc about what happened here. And my question, my point would be because we want to do better next time. And my question to you is, in that light, going forward, do you think that you would give reassurances about safety of the air and the water and the toxic exposure after a catastrophe the way you did this time if we were, to, heaven forbid, to have another kind of catastrophe like this?
Going forward, I think it is the absolute responsibility of the agency to communicate to the public the information and the conclusions being drawn by the scientists who are looking at the data and making that analysis, not to inject any kind of a personal presumption into it, but to communicate what they are getting based on what the scientists and professionals who are trained in this are finding.